analyzing, and unleashing the human potential through an innovative, inclusive, and socially just initiative for high school learners in the Department of Pathology at Faculty of Health Sciences, UCT. So, before even I start with the outline, this is an initiative which has been run within the department for a number of years. So, Melvin and I just kind of collated all the information of what's happening over the years, and we just giving you a snapshot. So, this is not the whole kind of things what happened over the years. So, this is where we are at the moment. So, the presentation will entail, I will provide the context of this initiative and what is the socially just initiative, and also highlighting about pathology and pathology learning center, which is a museum which has got thousands of specimens collected over a number of years. And I will kind of share some success stories, and also what is the way forward Melvin and I are dreaming or visioning about. So, as we already know, there are a lot of challenges that prevail within the South African basic education system, and the social inequalities and disparities, and also kind of contributes this to this kind of divide or kind of disparities within the South African basic education. And there is a dire shortage of health professionals within South Africa. And I think the latest report I saw is this the one I referred here. There is need for more holistic interventions, and there needs to be bottom up approach. So in one way, what we trying to vision is we need to ignite that young minds right from a high school level, so that we can address or mitigate this kind of shortage in a long run. So the dropout rates in South African high universities was really kind of shocking. 50 to 60% of the first year students they drop out, and one of the root causes being the wrong choice of subjects. And this statistics is, again, I don't know how current this one is. Only 4% of students that enroll in grade 1 to 12 end up with 4-year degrees. So pathology, pathos, and logos. So within the Department of Pathology, there are 8 divisions, and it's a service orientated department uh, within the Western Cape. And there is a lot of scientific research, both basic and applied research happens, which entails exploring the mechanisms of various diseases, diagnostic options, prevention, and treatment. And there is a lot of training opportunities for both undergrad and postgrad students within the department. And Pathology Learning Center, as I already mentioned, there's an extraordinary collection of teaching specimens which spans more than 80 years. And the specimens are normally derived from the surgical procedure autopsies at Cape Town teaching hospitals within in and around Cape Town. And also, the cherry on the top is there is a digitized collection of these learning materials, which can be accessed by students across Africa. The Socially Just Initiative, which we presented in this presentation, some of the schools that participated, if you can see a whole list here, and the learners are normally from grade 10 to 12. So in other words, it's more like kind of job shadowing kind of aspect. In school terms, that is what this initiative is referred to as, but we see this more than a job shadowing initiative. That's why we titled this as more a kind of generic social justice just initiative. So Melvin, being the pioneer of this kind of particular initiative that's been running for a number of years, he normally gets the request from the parents or sometimes from the schools. So first thing he does is pre-event. Before we invite any learners into the space, he obtain a consent. We do everything properly so that we avoid any complications further. So to get students, especially the teenagers, into a space, there is a lot of specimens and you know, so he obtained the consent and he explicitly states, I'll show you a template in a moment, both from the learner and the parent. And during the event, Melvin and the whole team of us from different divisions and also inter-department, sometimes people from other departments also participate in this initiative. He kind of stimulates the auditory and visual learning, and by showing some videos pertaining to pathology, especially anatomical pathology division, where our head of the department, Prof. Pillai, is based, has been very active in this initiative for a number of years. And then he explains the different concepts and show them the reports, and it's more kind of hands-on kind of exercise for them. They engage with the histology report and the medical legal report. I think most of the time, first time these learners are exposed to such kind of reports, and also they've been exposed to the collection of the human specimens, and also they perform some autopsy techniques under the supervision of Mr. Melvin Lawrence. So this is an example template of a consent form. um, Melvin will just put together based upon the need what exactly will happen in that particular moment in time. So, for example, this particular one, which happened on the 22nd and 23rd of June, it's more the histopathology has been exposed to students. And after that, they did all these activities with Melvin, and also what are the requirements the students, the learners have to have. And then this is how the consent forms get obtained before they really visit the Pathology Learning Center. And this is a picture where you can see a learner. I think she's busy making up some solution here. And during the event, the students are really active, tactile, and peer learning happens. Sometimes he does receive the request from one student or a couple of students from the same class or same school, or during the vacation period, there could be even learners from different schools. The processing of specimen, again, because we have the consent form already obtained from the participant and the parent being a minor, and everything happens under the supervision of Melvin. And sometimes they prepare microscopic slides, and they've been really exposed to how human tissue gets preserved, and also the mixing of various chemicals for preservation gets happen. So this is like a whole 1 day event. Most of the time, it's confined to a day or two. I think in rare circumstances, we do get requests where the learners are hosted for more than a day. And post event, the students on the same day when the learners, sorry, I'm just interchanging. I'm more confident in using the term students because I'm used to this in this context. So the learners receive the certificate of attendance at the end of the event. And then there is also an opportunity for evaluation and feedback. Most of this thing gets done verbally at the end of this initiative. And sometimes Melvin also receives emails from the parents and the learners post the event. So they reflect on the experience, this initiative, what happened, how they perceive. So this is an example of a certificate of attendance given to a learner, specified, and then the signatures normally will entail 2 or 3 people who contributed to that particular initiative. So you can see some pictures, learners in action. These are our learners from Western Cape high schools. They're actively kind of engaging, observing things under the microscope, or brainstorming or learning kind of things within the Pathology Learning Center. And sometimes in the past, I haven't been part of this, a confession to make. Students from certain schools, along with the teachers, they do visit the Pathology Learning Center. That initiative used to happen previously. I think post pandemic, this hasn't happened. Again, I'm speaking under correction. I haven't participated in one grand event where learners and the teachers participate for a whole day or two. So, in terms of success stories, the reason why we call them the success stories is the emails which Melvin and I receive after the initiative. I mean, we have a whole plethora of these evaluations or feedback. Yeah, if somebody has scored 93% for this job shadowing project, and they thanking the opportunity, and most of them seem to have really benefited, and it kind of made conscious decisions in terms of the subject choices. And especially, I would like to allude you to the fact in this particular one from 2018, the learner would like to further her education in the medicine field, and this opportunity has truly opened her eyes a lot. For us, that is like the pinnacle of our success in terms of igniting the young minds, because we couldn't ask for better. Rather than it's coming from the learner, and the parent is reiterating her daughter wants to pursue a career in medicine. So last but not least, there is always room for improvement. This is a snapshot, as I said, what we are doing within the department. Collaboration is key. We want to put together an active and engaged program which involves other divisions within pathology. At the moment, not all 8 divisions are actively involved in every single project. So we need more kind of formalized structure where we can also involve other departments within FHS, and also maybe a closer kind of establish a closer relationship with WCED. Then we know what are the things which would really facilitate the learners in terms of their subject choices, or to kind of ignite their passion to choose a career within health sciences. So that is something, a work in progress. And yeah, during your at the end of the session, your comments are more than welcome. And the initiative, it really facilitate learners correct choice of subjects in high school. It provides learners with real life scenarios. So for example, a medical scientist or a specialist pathologist, and they have interactions with various kind of, personnel, health professionals, and also it sparks learners curiosity in health sciences, where they can really consider whether it is for them or not in a long run. So I would like to conclude this presentation by quoting Madiba's words: the youth of today are the leaders of tomorrow. I'd like to acknowledge our head of the department, Professor Komala Pillai, and Dr. Jane Eads, who's retired now, and Mr. Jürgen Heitner and Dr. Gavanda, and staff from all these divisions and departments. And last but not least, the learners from the various high schools who really contributed to this initiative, where they really kind of affirmed what we're doing it right, and how we can improve every single time. So Inkosi, Donkey, and thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much for that inciting presentation. This really is amazing work being done in the Department of Pathology. So we're now going to move on to the Department of Health and Rehabilitation Sciences, moving over to Kristen and Rizwana's presentation. Thank you so much.
Good morning, everybody. I'm going to just turn on my camera so everyone can see who I am. I'm just going to try and start the presentation. Rizwan, I don't know if you want to introduce yourself as well while I set up.
Sure, let me put my camera on. So hi everybody, I am Rizwana. So Kristen and I will be presenting this topic together today. Okay, I see it's on the screen.
Okay, can you see it? Okay, so good afternoon, everybody. So Rizwana and I are from the Division of Communication Sciences and Disorders within Health and Rehab. And today we'll be sharing some of our insights and learning around one of our final year speech therapy and audiology courses, which is entitled Seminars in Communication Sciences. So just to provide a little bit of background on the course itself, the seminars course was designed to provide students with opportunities to review and critique literature in speech therapy and audiology in order to develop and present, and also to develop and present a coherent argument around the literature. And in the course, they're also introduced to continuing professional development as one of the core focuses of the course. And the topics that they use are reflected of a range of areas that are related to the professions. And Rizwana will go into a little bit more detail around the specific logistics around this later on in the presentation. So in 2020, we engaged in a curriculum review process for the course and chose to realign the course with the transformation objectives of the faculty. And in particular, we really wanted to focus on the idea of decolonizing the curriculum when rethinking this particular course. And so in refocusing the course, while the course was still focused on enabling students to review and critique discipline-specific knowledge and be able to develop a coherent argument, we were interested in thinking about how this could be enabled in a way that supported the development of students' critical thinking skills. So when I say critical thinking skills, I mean encouraging students to be able to question and interrogate the knowledge that is within the discipline to uncover those underlying truths that are not always so overtly stated. So in restructuring the course, we tried to restructure it in the following ways. So firstly, we propose that the overall theme for the course be the voices of emerging professionals. So this is where we aim to foreground how students were making sense of the topics in the profession in relation to them as emerging professionals. And this shift placed emphasis on the student voices in making sense of when they were reading the literature. So this particularly disrupted the traditional notion of curriculum, which generally sees the student as a passive recipient. So they generally considered as, you know, a knowledge consumer as opposed to a knowledge holder or knowledge generator. And so this shift really valued the knowledges and experiences that students were bringing into the curriculum. And this idea of foregrounding student voices was woven into a number of different aspects of the course, including within the rubric, with the development of topics where students were required to flesh out which specific aspects they wanted to focus on, as well as in the presentations, which also had a big focus on peer sharing, engagement, and interaction. The second way in which we were restructuring the curriculum was through developing critical thinking skills and the ability of the students to be able to, one, understand the literature, but to also be able to critically critique that literature. And we really wanted to focus on developing students as agents for change. So through challenging them to bring in their own voices into the curriculum, we really wanted to challenge students to see themselves as a key part of the people who could advocate for change in the profession. So seeing themselves as holding that power to make change, and the power in also advocating for the need to develop more contextually relevant practices and more equitable practices within our professions. The third way was peer sharing. So we tried to weave in peer sharing and peer learning into the curriculum design and provided students with opportunities to share their learning with their peers, engage in dialogue and discussion. And the last way is when we included a creative element. So we really encouraged students to develop provocative arguments and creative ways of sharing their learning with the rest of their peers. And this acknowledged that knowledge has multiple forms and different forms and shapes outside of the written word. And so it really acknowledged that other forms of expression can also be powerful ways of conveying meaning. And similarly, that's how we've also tried to structure the PowerPoint presentation and using a lot more visual representation as opposed to a lot of words. So I think in particular, in how we've tried to restructure the course, there's really been this big value around student voices. And I think that speaks directly to the transformation objectives of the faculty, which, you know, allows students to fully participate in their own learning within the curriculum. And so now Rizwana will go in and just give you a little bit of a sense of what the course structure was like and how we ran the course for last year.
Okay, so the theme, as Kristen mentioned, was around them finding their voices as emerging professionals. And so we designed the course in a way that was structured and supported to help them find their voice, the students, in a way that still made academic sense. So we divided both speech therapy and audiology students into 4 key topics. So there were 2 groups that covered the same topic. So this way we had the same topic, but a different perspective, which was nice. So we included our 4 topics, which were inclusive practices in speech language therapy and audiology professions. The second was decolonizing speech language therapy and audiology professions. The third was mental health in speech language therapy and audiology professions. And then the fourth topic was disability in context, implications for speech therapy and audiology practices. So for each topic, we had a topic convener supervisor, and we asked them to choose a topic that they were most drawn to, so that there was this passion for the topic from the side of the students and the topic convener, and they were just there to provide guidance, to brainstorm ideas. So it was not as prescriptive as a research supervisor, for example. It was more about going on this journey with the students. So it was very much providing them feedback, have they developed a critical argument, how to develop a critical argument, field any questions that they had. And so in this way, we also allowed the students to find their own voice, but not feel completely abandoned in doing so. And so for the course requirements, we had our three requirements. They were first that they needed to present a critical discussion piece. And as part of this, our students had to frame a critical question within the topic area that they feel strongly about. They identified three key issues pertaining to the question, and then they went and they consulted with literature. So they needed to read three articles relevant to the issues while simultaneously reflecting on their own personal experiences and knowledge. And then through interacting with a group, we asked them to come up with a creative way of representing this. And the only real requirement was that there had to be an audio or a visual component. The students were allowed to present the critical discussion pieces in their preferred language of choice, as long as there was an English translation for the purpose of marking. But we gave them ideas. They could do a collage, write a short story, drawings, paintings. They could sing a poem, podcasts. And even though they could do a PowerPoint or write a short discussion paper, which we saw students were naturally drawn to, because that speaks to their academic structured side of of things. We really encourage creativity, and last year we had students who created this beautiful artwork piece that we are going to present it somewhere in health and rehab. Lots of them did podcasts, made videos. Some of them even created their own Instagram pages and interacted with different therapists, and then came back to tell us about that. So it was really a very creative process. And then once they had put together this critical discussion piece, they then needed to have a discussion. So it was our presentation where they needed to have this discussion with their peers around what they did, why they did it, show the discussion piece, and have a very engaging presentation. And to assist them with having it an engaging presentation, we asked them to add a component of continuing professional development. So they had to come up with 5 questions that was linked to their specific critical discussion piece and discussion, and then allow the audience to engage with those questions, and they could facilitate a discussion. And in this way, we also gave them a taste for future CPD activities that they would engage with once they qualified. And I think one of the key things that we sort of emphasized with them in terms of the learning process was valuing group learning. And so this is again why the topic supervisor was more a sounding board and was less prescriptive, to allow students to find their voices individually and as a collective. And we also encourage them to manage these group processes as independently as far as possible, without needing a supervisor to necessarily step in. Just again, giving them a taste of the working world and working with others. Yeah, Kristen, do you want to cover the last little bit?
Sure. So just in closing, I think we also need to, it would be remiss of us to not acknowledge that although we've been engaging with a curriculum change process, but that change process is not necessarily an easy one, and that while we have attempted to foreground student voices and critical thinking in how we've conceptualized the seminars, we also realized that there wasn't necessarily an easy process for students to engage in that, leading up to the seminar course. A lot of how they've also been taught has been socialized in ways to think and be a health professional, and a lot of times that links to being objective and not bringing your subjective understandings and knowledges into it, and so when engaging with this type of curriculum change process, I think just getting students to shift their thinking to include who they are within how they're making sense of the literature wasn't always an easy process. And I think we just need to acknowledge that when we are thinking about curriculum change, that one part of it, yes, is the importance of changing our courses to be more reflective of the student population and diversity, but that those values also need to come across in all of our degree, so that students feel like they are also part of the curriculum which they're learning. So yes, thank you.
Thank you so much for that presentation. Again, very informative. We're now going to move on to the Department of Anesthesia and Perioperative Medicine. I'm handing over to Cheryl.
Hi everyone. Thank you, Vivi, for that. Unfortunately, I had someone, one of the consultants were going to come. I'll put my screen on just so that you can see me. Let's just see. Camera on. And is it on?
It's on, but we can't see. You might have your.
Oh, maybe I've got my. Let me just see if I. There we go. There we go. Sorry, let me just turn you my hair up. Okay, so thanks very much for the opportunity. I had one of our consultants who is sort of a coordinator for our students. He's been called out to an emergency in cardiac theatre, so I'm going to try my best to see if I can get myself through this presentation. Okay, so I'll speak from the heart, really. So the Department of Anesthesia, we have people in our department who are excellent at the teaching and supporting of our registrars and our students. The reason for that is that we have people that's very tolerant and of our junior and senior members, especially with struggling members in our department. So I will talk about the educational support that is being provided to trainees. We have registrars who comes from a very vigorous recruitment process where they sort of assessed at different levels, which means when they come here, they have quite a bit of experience coming into the registrar program, which helps with the program, especially most of them, when they come in, not because they are, because we have so many people applying for posts here. We have something like, for 6 posts, we'll have about 30 people applying, and then where do you cut it off? So then they are assessed and really reviewed on how they're going to cope with the program. That's the first thing. But the department are really very good at looking after the wellness of the students. We have a sort of we've got a buddy system in place where students are allocated a senior specialist and also a senior registrar who will coach, mentor, and give them the necessary skills and the books and the tutorials and the teaching and the courses and refresher courses and in order to prepare them sufficiently for examination purposes. They have regular tutorials where they also have members looking after their course material, helping them, especially the ones who are maybe challenged or struggling along. They help them, they give them advice, strategic advice and support with planning their time to write, especially going towards writing the emails. And they also given advice of which books to buy, notes to use, tuts and lectures to attend. Rotations are normally designed and for those members, especially when they are heading towards exam. So there's quite a bit of support for them when they're heading towards exams and the planning to avoid difficulties and disappointments down the line. That to me, I can see that people are generally very happy in the department. Most registrars are happy in the department because they feel very well supported. And then in the office of the HOD where I am, we have an open door policy where people come and they can come and talk to me as the chair of the transformation transformation advisory group. And they feel safe because this is the report and this is the feedback that I get from most people in the department, where they feel they can come and talk to me or to the head of department, and they feel that we've created fairly safe spaces for them. So in order for, and then in all of that, the wellness of people are very important to us and to the department, to the head of department, where we have even created a space for moms coming back from maternity leave. It's called our breastfeeding room, where people can go and they come into a very safe space where they can feel there's some privacy. And this room we also use for people needing time away and just some quiet time. Then we also have senior people in our department who they coach them, they coach the registrar, they coach the students. We have interns rotating, and with most of these most of the feedback that we get from our students and interns and medical officers rotating via the department, we've had fairly positive, I would say, good feedback and positive feedback from most of the students rotating via our department. There's a collegiality that I am in awe of. People are normally working towards this common goal. They very seldom do I hear any complaints, or do we get complaints coming via the system, because they feel supported. And I can speak to that because it is very comforting to know that most people are feeling supported and they feel they can come and talk to either myself or to the head of department or to the management team, which does help with studies and taking away anxiety and so on. So our general wellness of our registrars are good. On the other side of that, we have cultural evenings that speaks to just balancing off the exam fatigue and so on. So that we had about 2 or 3 cultural evenings this here just a while ago. We had a cultural evening where they can come and do some art. They even sing and they have fun, musical instruments and so on. They do all kinds of different events at this cultural evening, and we have about 2 to 3 a year. We also have sporting events. We've just had one at the beginning of this year where we had soccer game where even family members are allowed to can come and play with their children, and we are arranging an interdepartmental soccer game with maybe with Tigerberg and other institutions, which is also very comforting to know that people can have fun and work together. Our successes for just being in this department for this year is our supernumerary and outreach programs. Our outreach programs are very successful. There's lots of outreach being done. There are registrars are allowed and they're encouraged to go to SASA. They get regular refresher courses leading up to exam time. We have not had many unsuccessful FCA Part 1s or FCA Part 2 results. I would say about 99% of people come through the system successfully. And they normally, under normal circumstances, they want to come and stay and come back and give back. And normally when they come back, they contribute in the teaching and the workload of lectures and so on. We have other training going on, like the MIPA course, that is the pediatric managing emergency in pediatric anesthesia. We've got the FIGHT course. We've got all different courses where people are encouraged to attend given roster and rotations. The challenges that we have, well, I would say the successes that we have, I would say, is the supernumeraries that came through our system and giving back into Africa and sub-Saharan Africa, giving back. Yes, we want to say that we want to keep them. We want to keep them within the department, but it's not possible because of challenges and financial constraints. But the successes for a lot of people coming and leaving the department, coming through the system, is the contribution into Africa, into sub-Saharan Africa, into other departments across the country. Most people leaving here are going to take up head of department roles and senior roles in other institutions, and they generally come back and want to give back to the department. For me, that is speaks for itself, I would say, and we try and help and support where we can. And yeah, there are many things happening, and people are feeling where they're allowed, they are encouraged to take up initiatives that they feel comfortable with and that they want to carry out, and that is part of why people feel very supported, that they're not limited to doing certain tasks that it's out of the scope of their work. Yeah, so thank you very much for all of that, and thank you, Beware, and everyone.
Thank you so much, Cheryl, for that very brief presentation. I really do appreciate you taking time to step in for the consultant who wasn't able to join us. So now we'll be moving on to our last department presentation, which will be IBMS. Zenda and Fezile will be presenting on behalf of that department. Thank you so much.
Hi, everyone. So I'm Zenda. I think I'll be going first. I'm going to jump the queue. I'm going to share my presentation, and then we can, of course, now it won't be there. Yeah. I'm going to switch off my camera because it's annoying having myself in the background. So I was actually, Jay, I was actually at South Peninsula. So I wish I'd been there when you guys had started your initiative. That would have been great. So this is a very targeted intervention that came from the Department of Integrative and Biomedical Sciences within the Division of Medical Biochemistry. And just as a background, IBS is an integrated course. And when we say integrated, it means that it has various disciplines: human biology, public health, immunology, quantitative literacy, and of course, medical biochemistry. And this is taught within 6 case studies, such as diarrhea, cardiovascular issues, burns. We have 3 assessments. We have assignments, we have practical assessments, and we have QR assessments. And all of these sort of in-course and final assessments will give you the mark, right, to pass IBS. If you don't pass IBS, you'd most likely have to repeat first year. So this intervention focuses on medical biochemistry, and this is a very rudimentary analysis, but I can't get away from Excel. It's one of my passions, unfortunately. So what this shows is just the relationship or association between medical biochemistry and the final IBS marks, right? And you can see there's a linear relationship, which suggests that if students do poorly in medical biochemistry within assessment 3, then they tend to do poorly overall. Now, we've got an amazing intervention. It's for many years. It was there way before I came. And that is, we have this tutorial system that happens about every week or every 2 weeks. And we bring all the students together and they get to discuss and speak about, answer questions in a tutorial system in small groups of their own choice with tutors. And this has been an amazing intervention, which across the years, every evaluation has said that these TUTs have helped them. Now, I'm not going to focus on those TUTs because those TUTs are designed for the entire class. I'm interested in those students that's situated in this part of the graph, the ones that seem to be struggling with medical biochemistry, and also to try and change and give them more access to the knowledge. So just to add that biochemistry is a little bit, what we expect is not rote learning, and it's a lot of application. So, and this is where I think we students struggle with. Okay, so I want to give a brief background and context as to the approach that we took and why we took this approach. If you're thinking about the transition, right, from school to university, we know that it's a very traumatic experience for some students. And I'm not talking only specifically about South Africa, this is a global phenomenon. And largely it comes from the varying expectations between students and staff. And across the globe, students seem to expect lecturers to be sympathetic, reassuring, and I'm talking about first years, yeah. They expect feedbacks on drafts of work. They expect us to provide detailed notes, and they expect teaching to be very much the same as it was in school. So they enter into first year with those expectations. On the other hand, our expectations is that students have to be able to be independent and be able to evaluate critically. And they should be self-motivated and self-disciplined. And of course, we want them and expect them to attend our lectures. But now, literature is saying that these varying expectations can have an impact on students' well-being, as I'll unpack later. Now, if you're looking at the South African context, as Jay explained, I mean, we're looking at a situation where most of our students are first generation, an immense amount of pressure. English is not their first language in most cases. And I mean, we are considered by Time Magazine the world's most unequal country, right? So this was a quote from one of the papers. It said, although students from socially disadvantaged backgrounds gain admission to university, they experience a crisis of confidence and self-esteem, which influences their sense of belonging in the new environment. So we have students coming in with expectations, and these expectations are not the same as ours. They come into an environment that's very different from theirs because the university is located within Rondebosch, or in our case, observatory. And that is not usually the background or experience of our students. And I'm talking very broadly and I'm generalizing. So please, if you feel I'm being a little bit too generalist, forgive me. I'm just referring and reflecting what the literature is currently saying. Right, so what are we getting? This is a snapshot which all the courses get in first year. I'm sure you've all seen it. But what this means is that our students are coming in and we then we basically categorize them. If you remember, we have the readers category 1, 2, 3, etc. And then we have the open category. This data is comparing readers category 1, which is these white bars here, to the open category. Redress 1 is our students that have at least one parent, which is Black African. And the open category is basically, we could say, the white students or students that most likely don't declare, which isn't that much in the undergrad courses. So if you're looking across the years, we can see that in every single year that the white bar is lower than that of the pink bar. And this, if you average it, it means that if you have a parent from a Black African family, then on average, your marks will be 9% lower than someone from the open category, okay? When we're looking at financial aid and we're comparing students that have, that don't receive financial aid, that's the pink bar, with students that do receive financial aid. Once again, you can see the difference across the years. And this tells us that if you require financial aid, your marks are going to be 3% lower than those that do not. Very broadly, this red indicates number of failures. Every second bar represents Regis category 1. You can see here, Regis category 1 tends to have more failures than that of our open category. So what does this tell us? This tells us that race and class matters when it comes to academic achievement, and we can't get away from that. If we think we can, then that's a fallacy. So in terms of UCT transformation framework, we've got these categories that we're all supposed to be working on and reporting on. And of course, this is the one that we focus on. And each of these categories is underpinned by institutional culture. And all of the all the different presentations that went before mine highlighted the importance of institutional culture, even though it wasn't said explicitly. And institutional culture for me, and in general, is the fact that we have to engender and cultivate a sense of belonging. Right? A sense of belonging is very important. So it's actually a basic psychological need of all of us. We all want to belong. We go into a room and we gravitate towards a group of individuals where we feel safe, where we feel we belong. Students come into campus and they want that support. They want to feel connected. They want to experience being cared for. They want their voices to be heard. They want respect. They want value. They want us to look at them and think, wow, each and every single one of you can make a contribution to our faculty. Let me ensure that happens. However, the people or the students that we hold in high esteem are those that are academically excellent. The ones that are struggling, we generally don't celebrate them, right? because surely there's nothing to celebrate, or so the rhetoric says. But what that does is it just engenders a lack of belonging. And then what does that do? According to literature, it increases dropouts, and this is global, right? It's not only restricted to South Africa, but in our specific case, I mean, doesn't that mean that we are probably in a worse situation? Mental health challenges. We had a talk yesterday about mental health challenges experienced by students. It's terribly high, especially in our faculty. And then, of course, poor academic performance. So what was really interesting for me that it also affects help-seeking behavior. If you don't feel safe, you are not going to ask for help. Why would you go to a system or go into a system where you don't feel safe, right? No one's going to do that. And what we say, we put all these interventions in place, and we try so hard as conveners and academics to provide opportunities for students to get help. And yet when they don't come, it feels almost as though they're disappointing us in some way. But if they don't feel they belong, they're not going to come and seek help, right? Okay. So I think I've drilled that home enough. So that comes to the actual project that we started. The hypothesis here was that the reason why students in IBMS in relation to medical biochemistry, look, this was related to medical biochemistry. I don't know. I have done the analysis on the other disciplines, but it's not relevant here. But I'm just speaking specifically what we hypothesized would be happening. Why is biochemistry so difficult for students? We think it's possibly because of alienation and isolation. And of course, there's really poor exposure to biosciences in high school, such as practical solving. That's why the program that Jay in pathology runs is so amazing, obviously. And then, of course, there's poor preparation, critical analysis, and written communication. We wanted, with this project, we wanted to address the psychosocial and academic challenges of our students. And to really improve the student experience and to want to come to a place and learn. So we decided to do this by running small tutorials on medical biochemistry. And one of the key aspects of these tutorials was that we were going to use very skilled tutors or basically skill them up. So the importance of tutors and the emotional quotient is really not underestimated. This was a study that basically explained what was important to students about what was it that made a good tutor. And they reported saying that it was helpful, caring, likable, and hands-on. Right? Nowhere did it say, oh, but they need to have all the knowledge so that they can tell us the answers. And what the students said was that they felt that this type of tutor increased help-seeking behavior, studying harder, more interesting class, improved well-being and belonging. So when I read up about this and found this out in literature and the work that's being done in terms of developing tutors, we sort of decided that maybe tutors would be a focus point of this intervention as well. So we identified 6 tutors. And these were 1 staff member, 3 PhD students, 2 MSc students, and they all had a background in biochemistry. They each underwent a 2-day workshop in diversity training. They had weekly academic training on content. So I met with them and went through the content in biochemistry that was taught every week in IBS. And then we did weekly debriefing on TUTS. And this was because, you know, when you go into a small room with students that you don't know and you're a postgrad student, it's quite stressful. And so we wanted to just ask them how things were going and what worked, what didn't work, and just give some guidance. So we thought a debriefing was very important. So I wanted to highlight the diversity and sensitivity workshop that was run by Soraya Ne. And it was really about focusing the tutors on the experience of the students that will be walking into their rooms. The reason for this is that these students have failed, right? They have failed a certain component of their course. And so they will be coming in ashamed, and they will be coming in feeling, feeling not very good. And the importance that Soraya was trying to put over was that the tutors had to be able to walk in the shoes of the students so that they could relate to them. And she provided a framework of how to deal with students who weren't feeling safe. What questions to ask, how to answer the questions to create a psychologically safe environment. They spoke about how important storytelling is as a tool to get people to feel safe and welcome within a specific situation. And there was also a lot of emphasis placed on the tutors. And what we don't realize as teachers is that our self-awareness is one of the most important aspects of being a good teacher. And this is what we were trying to introduce the tutors to, and how their unconscious bias will affect the way they help students. And this was I think, an eye-opener for many of the tutors. They came away feeling a little bit shaky, but then also quite rejuvenated by the process. But a lot of it also came that they felt a sense of self-awareness, which I found gratifying. But overall, the feedback I got from the tutors was that the entire process was very valuable to them, and that it might have even helped them want to stay in academia, which is wow. Right, so the methodology we used for the students was that we identified them. We needed to identify them at the beginning of the semester. The problem was that they didn't do any biochemistry before that. So we couldn't say, oh, these students were struggling biochemistry, and then let's ask them, invite them to come to the TUTs. But because we didn't have that, we got chemistry to give us the marks of the students that didn't do well in the biological molecule component of the chemistry course. And then if they failed that, we invited them to come to the tutorials. If they passed it, we didn't invite them. So all those green arrows indicates that the students didn't go through, they didn't have to attend any of the additional biochemistry support. But those, if they failed the chemistry component, they had to attend it. If they passed assessment 1, they no longer had to attend the tutorials. And those that did fail assessment 1 had to join the tutorials. And so it was sort of like, if you improved, you could leave. If you struggled, you came in. The issue here was that a lot of students didn't want to leave, and other students wanted to come in. So our capacity was quite stretched. And it's for that reason that we ended up with this other cohort where we invited them, but they didn't pitch. So we had a group of students who were invited, but they never came. We had a group of students that were invited and came, and then we had a group that weren't invited and obviously didn't come. So these were the tutorial questions. I had to come up with, my word, like 12 tutorial questions that would allow the students to develop, well, one, strengthen concepts and then be able to apply it. So it was always written within the context of a case study. I generally gave graphical representation of information because students struggle with looking at images and sort of extracting what they need to see from them. Then there was also a list of guide questions. The guide question was so that they make sure that they understood every single concept that was taught. And then that obviously applied that to apply that knowledge to the question. So we tried very much to take students through the process of learning or relearning, again, the biochemistry concepts that were taught in the week before. Right, so results. We had a student evaluation that was handed out. So we had approximately 60 students that responded to the student evaluation. If we're looking at the pie graphs, we can see that there were 7 questions. We're looking at the pie graphs. Blue indicates positive responses, and then neutral is orange and gray is negative. And as you can see, if you look at each of these pies, most of them are just almost 100% blue. Besides this, where some students actually didn't feel intimidated by medical biochemistry, which I felt was very happy about. So the questions were really to see where the students whether it helped them to understand the concepts, were they able to talk to their tutor, ask questions, did peers help them to learn, because that was a very important sort of tool within the tutorials, was that we wanted peer learning to happen. And then it was also about whether I needed to change the type of questions discussed. And everybody thought the students' evaluation was very positive. They benefited from this intervention. The comments, we only got 20 comments, but just qualitative themes based on these. I was very grateful to see that the majority of them, that the TUTS helped them understand the concept. So there was an academic benefit to this intervention. We only had 4 comments, but at least some people felt that we had created a safe environment, which was very important to us. We wanted students to feel like they belong. Strange enough, there were 5 of them that wanted more questions and more work. That was also interesting. And of course, we had the 2 who wanted the memo. But I selected one of the comments just because it reflected what we wanted to come out of this. It says that medical biochemistry is quite a daunting concept. And I feel as though my tutor created a safe environment that fosters learning and discussion. I really appreciate the help. And this is the kind of thing that I think I will always try and work towards, is the response from students like this, that they feel safe and that learning is actually a pleasure and not a torture. Right, so I'm a biochemist, I'm a scientist. I cannot get away from Excel, as I said. What I wanted to do was I wanted to see whether students who attended the additional biochemistry tutorials, which we abbreviated to ABTs, that they had achieved higher marks than those who did not attend. So both of those groups, remember, there was a group that we invited that didn't come. So we compared it. So red are those that didn't come to the ABTs and those that came to the ABTs. And I was very sad to see that the blue line was consistently lower than that of the red line. Now, what that means, I haven't really thought through yet. I am saying to myself that there's a sharper increase in marks from assessment 2 to assessment 3. So maybe there has been an impact on the academic output. But as you can see, across every single assessment, those students who didn't attend the ABTs seem to score better than those that did. Maybe it was the students who actually came to the tutorials that knew that they needed help, whereas the ones that didn't might not have needed as much help. I'm really not sure. But overall, I think it was a success in terms of the tutors. They gained insight into themselves and the students, and I think it changed the way they saw themselves. I think the students benefited from the TUTS in that they felt welcome, they could discuss it, they felt that they knew what was happening. But unfortunately, it wasn't translated into the kind of marks that I saw. And I'm not sure whether I even have to worry about that. Yeah, maybe that would be something for discussion later. And in terms of acknowledgement, the tutors were amazing. I cannot explain to you, it was a lot of time that we had to spend doing this. And they really came in and they hit the ball out of the field, whatever that's called. And then, of course, the funding support, which was from ISFAP. And it was really very, very, I basically discovered that there was some money I could apply for a week or 2 before the semester started. And yeah, so I'm very grateful for that. And that's me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Linda. Fizile. You're muted.
That was a hello in sign language.
Good afternoon, everyone. And I am Fezile Kumalo. I am a former member of the IBMS department. I've recently moved on to pathology, but this program that we started at IBMS. Just give a brief overview of what I'll be talking about, the aim, motivation, conceptualization, and the founding principles of this program, as well as the team that's involved. So this program was developed to basically look at the research skills or develop research skills and professional training of our postgrad students in our department, IBMS, and to be expanded to our other departments as well, and as well as the institution at large when we grew in a critical mass. And the motivation was that we assume that because of the research groups that we find ourselves in, our experiences are the same across the board, but it's not. And the inequality of these experiences is what prompted us to basically start this program as an equalizer for everybody. And inequality presents itself in many different forms, including limited financial support or even academic support, lack of exposure to opportunities, which go beyond what you're expected to do as a master's or PhD student. And also the limited access to peer support structures. And this was very critical in 2020 when lockdown happened and people felt very isolated. So through this program, we had hoped to provide activities that encourage peer-to-peer learning, mentoring, networking, personal development, as well as professional development, and also in a way confront the inequality of the education system in South Africa. And this theme, I think, has been coming up with all the presentations that have come up today, that it's our responsibility to make sure that the students that we graduate the quality of the students that we graduate are something that we're all proud of, and nobody feels as if they are less than because of their background. So this came about from a very selfish point of view. We had been having a discussion about our career progression as postdocs. And as some of you know, that postdocs can be quite a lively bunch who also at the same time want to be cradled and fed, specific things. So we're discussing about how we need to write our own basically development goals and then seek ways of making sure that we develop those skills. So a bunch of postdocs and early career researchers in the IBMS got together, and we thought of what is within this department space that we can do, one, to develop ourselves career-wise, as well as give back in a way. So the IBMS had already been hosting presentation workshops with the postgrad students, and those were then integrated into the concept of the postgrad academic training program. And this program is actually based on a scheme that is being run in UK universities called the East Bio program. And by 2021, we had started integrating students from pathology and HAB. So it wasn't just IBMS anymore. So one of the, I'm very proud of this because it was one of the things that the values that we had put in place for the program from the very beginning is that it's our responsibility to teach the next generation of scientists. And however, what we teach, what we taught 5 years ago is changing. It's quite fluid in what is required and what will be required in the next 10 years. So how it falls on us to make sure that our graduates are equipped with the necessary skills so that they can adapt to these changes. So human capital development then becomes a very important factor in the way that we do things as a department, as supervisors, as academics. So, and also in making sure that we train quality postgrad students. And that also then feeds into what the postdocs and the early career researchers were looking at for themselves on how do we then train and skills transfer, what techniques are available that can be widely distributed to other people, and also then expand that just beyond the lab space. So what are the requirements for the next academic? And what are the requirements for a person who decides that academia is not for them, but they need to explore other industry, what industry-specific skills are actually needed. So through the program, we then decided that there's going to be certain phases, foundation phase, and well, the second phase is phase 2. For lack of creativity on our part. So the first one is ensuring that our postgraduate students are equipped with the necessary foundation and advanced training that may not be provided during their undergraduate studies or even in their current research environment. So how do we do that? We actually, I'll get back to that now. And the next one is providing the skills needed to prepare our students for industry participation and also to develop the next generation of academics in a structured format, which is very lacking, especially for us. We very much, besides Zenda, who teaches, we still very much a largely research-based department with very little teaching involved. So all our master's and PhD programs are very much research-based only. So we needed to find a way to make sure that that structure is brought back and also that it is uniform across all the students or across all our graduates. So the first phase of the foundation phase is basically aimed at the first year master's and first year PhD students. Because of the diverse background of South Africa, not everybody has gone through the UCT system, and I know that our honors programs are quite rigorous, and they do quite a lot in preparing our students. So first part is scientific communication, basic biostats, introduction to research methodology, project management, writing, etc. We also partner a lot with officers within the university that whose sole focus is on providing support for the students. So we work with the careers office, and we also work with student wellness in providing workshops or access to workshops that might be beneficial to the students. And this is very important in the students' need to feel like they belong. And through the scientific communication, they also get to speak to people from other departments or students from other divisions that they normally wouldn't interact with. And with the presentations that we host every Thursday, they then get to hear about other science, other works of science, ask critical questions, and also learn how to be in a position where, like a conference situation, basically, where they will then be expected to answer questions. So this has been a really successful part of the program that we have been hosting since 2020. The second part of the program is the workshops and masterclasses, and this one we had really hoped that we would get a lot more of the postdocs and the early career guys to lead. There's a lot of great science that happens within our faculty. However, most of the time, if my project does not need that specific technique, I am less likely to go and find out about it. Or the only time I'll hear about it is if there's this big name visiting scientist. But there's actually a lot of work that is being initiated and established by our early career scientists. And we want to bring that to the forefront so that people know that there are all these, imaging facilities, and this is what you can do with it. Or, want to venture into single cell analysis in the future, these are things that are available to you. And also, if there's new technologies that are coming up and our scientists are looking to bring them in, this would be the perfect platform to actually talk about it and give it a wider audience. And we also looked at industry-specific and led topics, and this brings our industry partners, which we have grown quite a few in the recent past, and we'll be partnering with them this year on specific masterclasses and workshops. And one of the things that we have been adamant about with these ones is that you can't just come and tell us about your industry. You also have to impart a skill to our students so that it either goes into their CV and they can put it there, something that I have participated in a workshop like this, and these are the skills that I have gained out of it. So it's not just about you coming to boast about being a 10 million rand turnover. I don't know if that's good or not. 10 million rand turnover biotech company, but what skills are actually needed for a student to jump from academia into your industry, and are those skills transferable as well? And then scientific communication, we're going to be launching a competition in the middle of the year, looking at using the public understanding of science concept on how we generate information and how we distribute that information to the greater public that is not necessarily within our field of study or even education level. And another very important aspect of this is management, leadership, and teamwork. We don't work in isolation, but these are also skills that you need to have to be able to work successfully in a team. So these are all aspects that are needed, but we don't actually, we're not intentional about training these skills to our students. So as I said, the conceptualization of this started with a bunch of postdocs and early career scientists, but the program has been run by myself, Denver, Chinaka, who joined us last year. We had Pabalo, who has since left UCT, and Nicole, who is our dynamite admin person who makes sure that all the communication happens. And then also our partner departments, we have representatives from Hub, that's Mubin, and from pathology, and that is Digby, and they have been helping us grow the program, but also give input on what the various departments are thinking and where they're going and how we can start incorporating some of these things. So just some highlights on things that have happened. So every year we host a career expo, and our first one, we had looked at inviting very specific people from both an industry side and also from an academic side, just so that they can talk about their, not necessarily their journey, but what critical skills are needed to get to where they are. So you can see that they're quite senior people in their various fields, but it was important because these are the same people that will look at the CV and be like, this is the person that we want. So we thought getting input from them would be very beneficial to the students, so that when they start applying or looking at jobs, they already know that if I want to go into academia, these are the that I need to be concentrating on. And then last year we held another one, and that one was very different because we specifically looked at people who had walked the same hallways as our current students, who have then decided that they're going to venture into very, very diverse careers. We had two guys who started their own biotech company. We had someone whose their main job is looking at policies that govern how we do research. We had a medical writer. We had Anna, who is who uses art basically, and we had another Martina, who has their own NGO, and that's looking at developing scientists. So all these people were really excited to come and talk to the students. There was food also, so that could also be why the turnout. We were expecting 50 people and we ended up hosting about 100 students. And the feedback has been that we need more people and we need more diversity, because also the faculty is quite diverse in the careers or in the professions that are taught within, within the faculty. So it would be nice to expand who we can invite in the next coming expos, and we are always welcoming or open to people suggesting what they want to see and who they want to connect with. So based on that, these are just photos from the last Career Expo, and we have been fortunate enough that Prof. Colette has been very supportive of the program. And as we launch tomorrow, I'm hoping that he's also going to be there to encourage the supervisors and the students to really make use of the opportunity of. I am going to stop there because I can go on and on about the program, and I know that we don't have a lot of time. So thank you, viewer.
Thank you so much to Zenda and to Fezile. Now we move on to the Q&A session of the webinar. So if anyone has any questions for the presentations from today, you're more than welcome to put your hand up and we start the conversation. Okay, I think the presentations are maybe a bit too interesting. We don't seem to have any questions at all. Okay, thank you. Jay?
Thank you, Vivek. Mine is not a question. This is more a kind of comment, rather. Uh, I like how you threaded the whole presentations, because I started with high school learners and it culminated with Fesile's target on postgrad students. So obviously there is a lot of commonalities across the presentations, and I like how you strategically positioned, right from high school until the postgrad. I mean, that is a representation of whole, academic kind of community here. So that's just an observation from my side, but it's very inspiring to see how other departments, other colleagues are really tackling the same issues but from a different lens. So I feel very inspired, and thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much for that comment. Any other comments or questions? Okay, then if we have nothing else, okay, Zenda, go ahead.
Hi, Vivi. I'm just a little bit disappointed that there's so few people in the meeting, but I suppose that's normal. What I wanted to say was that that this is actually decolonizing science. There's always scientists are always saying, "How do you do this?" And these are all the examples of how you do this. And so all they have to actually do is come to these seminars to find out how to do it. Yeah, you see the bitter note in my voice. Okay, bye.
Thank you very much, Zenda, for that comment. Yeah, I do think this really takes a lot of direct challenging to different people in different departments to have them come to these conversations. I think you've just raised a very important point that the answers are within the faculty itself, but people just need to engage with them at platforms such as this. So, I mean, I know I'm definitely trying very hard to put out this information as far as possible. I think I'm preaching to the choir if I talk to you all about the frustration of the lack of attendance, but yeah, we'll just continue to try and motivate colleagues to attend, even if it's just the first half, the first 20 minutes, just to hear a presentation. But yeah, thank you very much to all of you for being here. Denver?
So I have a question. It's for Zenda, but it's not really for Zenda. It's more for the group sitting around, the table to think. So I'll address it to Zenda, but I don't expect Zenda to answer. And Zenda, I'm looking at the outcome, the results outcome of the tests of people who attended the tutorial versus those who didn't attend those special tutorials, and that the marks didn't really seem to show a big difference between those two groups. So I'm not going to make too much of the fact that the one seemed higher than the other, but maybe just say that they don't seem very different. And I'm wondering whether we should make a lot of that or not. And maybe to just kind of think, what do we think that means? And I don't know whether you've had time to think about the Zenda yourself, but maybe looking around the room and just hear what other people think. Thank you. So that was my question.
Yeah, so Denver, when I saw it, I was disappointed because as a scientist, you want to see that numbers increasing. I don't know whether maybe that shouldn't have been my emphasis. Maybe there wasn't enough, maybe my emphasis was just on creating an environment which the students enjoyed. And maybe it's also the way it was run. Maybe it should have been longer. There were instances where there was problems, just practical problems. And so maybe with more foresight, I'm not sure. I mean, that's why I also raised it. If anybody else has an opinion. I mean, if you read, people don't really use quantitative data to measure the success of interventions. And for me, that baffles me. But maybe that's how it is. I'm not sure.
Although,
of course, I'm as lost as you.
Although, of course, the initial thought would be that, if you have a group of people who we think are not doing well, then if we put in place an intervention, we're hoping that the intervention is maybe going to shift. And of course, an ideal group would be maybe a group that is sitting in the same area, but that don't go to the intervention. So, it seems that you've got the right groups of people that you're measuring. But it would be interesting maybe just to bounce that around sometime, just to think a bit more about it, and then maybe to look at whether it means we need to think a bit more about the intervention program or how we measure it. It's an interesting observation. I see Fazilia's hand is up. I'm stopped talking.
I just wanted to contribute to that conversation. So a good control would be people who did really bad, like really, really bad. I don't know how else to, and we also don't want to do that to poor students, but I think the only thing encouraging is that was there an improvement for the people who participated, and that maybe should be the baseline for how we structure the interventions going forward. I'm very much invested in this program, as you know, Zenda. So is there a way of just looking at that growth? And if there isn't, then then we see that there is an issue, because the other group is also attending the weekly tutorials, and they might be, because some of the conversations that I've had with these students is that I was just lazy, or they came up with very basic excuses of why they were performing not so well. So there is that point that even the low intervention of the low tutorials was enough for them to make it academically. But the students who the target is are there any improvements? Is there any things that we need to fortify going forward, or is the whole concept just needing to be re-evaluated? Thanks.
Kristen?
I just wanted to add that I feel like in a lot of ways, as academic staff, we really very much focused on like results as a way to measure success of a program. And I feel like sometimes that can be a little bit short-sighted in that perhaps the tutorials that don't always necessarily help in direct outcomes of that one course, but maybe equip the students with something else that then helps them to succeed within their degree. So I feel like in some instances, we need to also look more longitudinally at how students are performing and how they're coping. And perhaps it's not as easily attainable as a direct outcome of a course.
Thank you so much, Kristen.
Can I just respond to that? Because I met one of the students that I tutored, and she was so excited to see me. And she's like, because I've seen one of my favorite tutors, I know I'm going to pass tomorrow's test. So the intervention from Zenda's side on just that sense of belonging and making sure that their confidence levels of these students is one of the things that we could be looking at. And maybe 4 years down the line, we can reevaluate and go back to that very first group and be like, how has it changed the trajectory of that students like if we're still around Zenda, maybe that might be something to do.
If we're still around, Puzile.
Yes, you can go ahead, Denver.
Hi, thank you. So I do like that comment with regard to maybe looking at other factors of measurement of success, and maybe that is maybe something to consider. And I mean, I know. I know you're still going to be around another 20 years or something like that. So it may be worthwhile putting into place something where you maybe follow the students more longitudinally and maybe not only follow the mark of chemistry, but kind of looking more holistically at how the student seems to be integrating into university life for the group around them, because these are first year students, and so it is quite an important point in their lives as they move forward into the later years. So it may be worthwhile thinking a bit more about that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, colleagues, for the very interesting, very informative presentations, as well as the engagement afterwards. But I'm going to cut our time short now, just to allow for colleagues to get back to the last bit of work before the close of business today. Yeah, I hope that I'll see you all at the next webinar next month, around this time of the month again. Thank you so much, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Bye. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye.
Kiwi.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Bye.